Welcome. In this video, we're going to look at determining where functions are increasing and or decreasing and stating those as interval values. Now, in brief calculus, this is review from algebra. So this is stuff that we should already know. So let's just talk about what these definitions mean. If we think about increasing, decreasing, and constant, and we have some sort of graph that maybe looks like this, as we read that graph from left to right, as my x value, my x sub 1, moves forward to say some x sub 2 value, what you notice is in between that x sub 1 and x sub 2 value is that the corresponding outputs, f of x sub 1 and f of x sub 2, those corresponding y values, those are decreasing. So we would be saying on this horizontal region in between x sub 1 and x sub 2, the graph is falling. So again, looking at this picture, if we look at this here, we say, as we read it from left to right across the page, we see increasing, and then the graph is decreasing, and then it is increasing again. There is no constant on this graph that I've drawn here. But if we look at this from a definition standpoint, if we have some function f on an interval and any two numbers x sub 1 and x sub 2 on the interval, well, let's look at the decreasing piece first, since that's what I've drawn here. So we have an x sub 1 which comes before x sub 2. And what we notice about that y value, the y value corresponding to x sub 1 is greater than the y value corresponding to x sub 2. So let's think about what this graph might look like, or how this would relate to the definition if we were considering some sort of increasing or constant interval. So maybe I am drawing something and we are saying that, okay, well, on this interval from maybe some x sub 1 to x sub 2. So as we increase, or as we move from left to right on the x-axis, what is happening to those corresponding y values? And so when we compare this, we notice that the first y value, f of x sub 1, is less than the second y value, f of x sub 2. And we see that the graph is rising as we travel from left to right, from that lesser x sub 1 to the greater x sub 2 value on the x-axis. Similarly, if we were looking at some sort of, I'll just draw a horizontal line, which is constant, x sub 1, x sub 2, what do we notice about the corresponding y values, f of x sub 1 and f of x sub 2? As we travel from left to right on that graph, notice f of x sub 1 equals f of x sub 2. They're the same. So, algebraically, that's what the definition looks like. Visually, we can really just look at the graph. So as long as we can create a picture, we can state these intervals where the function is increasing, decreasing, or constant. So let's just look at one picture and make sure we know how to state those intervals properly. So here we have a nice graph, and we can see that a specific x value has been noted here at x equals -4, as well as x equals 6. And we also have a point of interest right here occurring at x equals 0. Well, if we look at this graph, and again, remember, we're always wanting to think about reading from left to right. If I was reading this from left to right, I would say, well, we're going up, and then we're going down, and then we remain horizontally constant. We are increasing again till we get to that max, and then we become decreasing. So what we want to remember when we state these intervals is that we're always going to be stating some horizontal x interval which describes the behavior of my y. My y's are rising, they are falling. remaining constant, rising again, and then falling once more. And then we always want to use open intervals or parentheses only when we write these intervals using interval notation. And that's just because we can be increasing infinitely to that maximum point. You can get infinitely closer to something without touching it. That's just the standard practice. So this is the only time when you're writing answers in interval notation that you do not have to say, well, is it parentheses or brackets? When you are stating intervals of regions where a function is increasing, decreasing, or constant, again, only use parentheses. So if I were to say, well, where is this increasing? We have a situation where my y values are increasing from negative infinity, because the graph continues off to the left forever, so that means my x values go to negative infinity to -4. Or we can use a union symbol here. Sometimes textbooks will have you just draw a comma, but I believe a union symbol is what's acceptable. So, or the other interval is here between 4 and 6, so +4 to 6. If we were to look at decreasing intervals, where is this function on which intervals are my y values decreasing? Well, that's going to occur between -4 and 0, this horizontal region, as well as 6 over here, from 6 to +infinity. And then lastly, where is this function constant? Where do the y values neither rise nor fall? They remain horizontally constant. And we can see that that is occurring between 0 and 4. So we would list these intervals in interval notation using what I've drawn here in the box. You do not need to write this X element symbol. And as I said, the computer, when you're entering your answers, sometimes it wants a comma here. So just make sure you pay attention to how it asks you to input your answer. So that is increasing, decreasing, and constant. Again, that was all review from algebra before you got here to brief calculus. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks and have a great day.